On scene. Frank, thanks. We've just gotten a statement in from the civil rights attorney Ben Crump, who's been representing George Floyd's family, and a statement from his family as well. And I'm quoting now: painfully earnest justice has arrived for George Floyd's family and the community here in Minneapolis. But today's verdict goes far beyond this city and has significant implications for the country and even the world. It goes on: justice for Black America is justice for all of America. This case is a turning point, it reads, in American history for accountability of law enforcement, and sends a clear message we hope is heard clearly in every city and every state. We thank Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison and his team for their fierce dedication to justice for George, but it does not end here. We have not forgotten that the other three officers who played their own roles in the death of George Floyd must still be held accountable for their actions as well. And we'll discuss those cases and how they'll proceed in just a moment. But first, I want to go to Cornell Brooks, former president and CEO of the NAACP, who's live with us this afternoon. Mr. Brooks, your reaction to what's happened?
Well, my reaction is much like those who are in the crowds: a sense of relief and a sense of resolve. Relief, not merely in terms of violence averted, in terms of rioting and that kind of thing, but violence held accountable. Namely, Derek Chauvin has been held accountable and found guilty on all three charges. And a sense of resolve. Why? Because where we saw in the wake of George Floyd's murder the largest demonstration in American history, namely 26 million Americans across at least 550 jurisdictions. We saw the cry from the crowd that is essentially nationwide, a cry for justice, literally heard and heeded by a group of jurors in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So incredibly, incredibly powerful. So I'm relieved, but I also feel a deep sense of resolve, as do I think people all across this country. In other words, the jury has spoken, but America has yet to speak in terms of dangerous, violent policing.
Cornell, what do you see specifically changing in the wake of this across America?
Several things. The first of which is in Washington, in our nation's capital, in Congress, passing the George Floyd Act. In other words, it's not enough for us to ask the jurors to do what it is that they were charged with doing. Congress must do what it is charged with doing, which is to say, prevent future George Floyds as hashtags as opposed to human beings. Two, reining in curtailing qualified immunity. In other words, this legal shield that allows police officers to act like Derek Chauvin and take Black lives for granted with impunity. And certainly turning around policing, transforming policing so that literally Black and brown people do not feel that they are objects of suspicion as opposed to subjects of protection. Those are things that we can do, and we have to do them in this moment, and we need to be very clear about this. This jury has spoken with respect to the murder of George Floyd, but if we remember Walter Scott, the man who was killed in South Carolina, that police officer was sent to jail. But in the intervening years, we've seen hashtags and Black bodies literally slaughtered and maimed in the streets. So the point being here is great sense of relief, but an even deeper sense of resolve to literally end police brutality, police violence in this country.
Cornell, it was notable and on some level historic to see a police chief take the stand against one of his own officers. It was notable and maybe historic as well to see the trainer come up and say, that officer whom I trained did not do what I trained him to do. The blue wall in this case is gone. Would you anticipate that the blue wall might have cracks in it from coast to coast?
Absolutely. So wonderfully stated, and an apt description of where we are in this country. So in other words, I'm not unduly unrealistic, but the blue wall is crumbling. In other words, we have police chiefs, we have the rank and file of policing in this country simply saying that is too much. What we need, however, is for policing and police officers to not merely note that the wall is cracking. They need to bring the wall down. They need to step across that wall into the community and stand in moral solidarity with people who are simply saying, we want to be treated as human beings. We want to be regarded as fellow citizens, literally not the subject, I should say, the object of your batons and your tasers and your bullets and your brutality.
Cornell?
We need them to literally cross that wall and join citizens all across this country who are literally standing up and standing against police brutality.
I wouldn't interrupt.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.